The Build Show coming to you live from Detroit, Michigan. Guys, we got an epic show for you today. This is gonna be a lot of fun. We got a live audience with builders, remodelers. We got some Builders First Source people, and I've got two really smart builders with me on stage. We're gonna be getting into remodel and new construction. What are some of the technologies that we take from both to help us in our businesses? Whether you're a builder, a modeler, architect, whether you're thinking about building a house, we got a lot of good info for you today. Today's Build Show is sponsored by Builders First Source, live from Detroit. Let's get going. Why don't you walk us through what that lobby, what that building looked like, what you had to do to bring it up to the incredible level of craftsmanship that we saw walking through that yesterday.
Certainly. So let's start with some of these first few slides are just the condition of the building that it was in when the developers started the rehab. So this is the first one. We've got two parts that we're looking at. Part of this is that rooftop bar that you guys saw in the video. And then the other part is the lobby restoration. So what you're looking at here is actually up in the Monarch Club, the bar portion. So the building was in pretty bad shape. It'd been vacant for, I don't even know how many decades, but the roof was completely gone. There were trees growing on the roof. I mean, some of them were 10, 15 feet tall. The developers actually took one down as part of their groundbreaking ceremony and planted it out in one of the parks, I guess. So
did you have to get a tree permit to remove a tree from
I didn't have anything to do with that. So.
In Austin, Texas, we would have probably had to get a permit for that.
Right. I think everyone in the city was happy to see the vegetation get removed from the roof. So this is representative of what this building looked like, floor by floor, as you go through it.
Rough. Real rough.
Yeah, the water will do a lot of damage, and obviously it peeled a lot of the plaster off of the walls. I mean, any of the woodwork, that was there was so rotten you couldn't salvage it. I mean, the building was obviously just in horrible shape. It was actually, some people wanted to demolish this building and didn't think that it could be salvaged.
And for me as a residential guy, I'm used to only doing wood frame. This is a 100-year-old building that looks to be concrete floors, concrete and steel infrastructure. And then those blocks you're seeing under those windows, that's just infill in between those are non-structural, in other words, right?
Correct. The whole building is steel post and beam construction, all wrapped in concrete. And then the infill, like you said, is like a fire block or a fire brick that they used in the early 20s in a lot of the buildings down here.
And then they would just plaster over that, and you can see some of that plaster still attached. A lot has fallen off.
Correct. Then they would just plaster right over it.
Got it.
So just more interior pictures of the building. Most of those were upstairs in the bar in the penthouse. This is actually the lobby. So this is how it looked when we walked into it. You guys got a little bit of a glimpse of what it looked like as a finished product, but this is where it got challenging. So the main goal of this restoration was to make it look as original as possible. And so we had to walk in there and take anything that we could and replicate it. And we did get lucky that there was enough of the original material in each finished portion of that lobby area that we could take it apart and replicate it. So we had some wood beams and corbels that you'll see in a minute. And out of the 18 or 20 that were in there, only 2 of them were actually left up in place. And
Wow.
we were lucky enough to be able to take those down and match them. And those 2 original ones actually went back into the lobby ceiling when it was all said and done.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we also had the wood beams up there, and all of this had stenciling on it. So we've got a phenomenal millwork company that came in, took those pieces out, took it to their shop, replicated these, and then we sent it to an artist's studio, and he had to replicate the very detailed stenciling on it. All of that material came back out to the site, it got installed, and there were several other portions to it, not just the wood portion.
Having a product like that where you have to figure it out raises your bar.
Yeah,
right?
that's a good point.
Where you have to look at it and go, how would I do that? That teaches you a lot when you have to kind of dig back into the past and figure it out. So I think it helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, in some ways, it gives us a template to go off of.
Yeah.
We have to match what is there. We're not creating it from scratch. We're matching what is there.
And
Yeah,
it establishes
figures
a
that out.
quality bar too, right?
Absolutely. So this is, just a good side-by-side of the before and after. Again, what we walked into, you can see some of the corbels on the top there that were existing that we took down and matched and put back up later. And I believe that arch on the right is still all the original. That didn't get replaced. There's that arch again that didn't get replaced.
Golly, that's amazing. Brent, let's go to you. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on one specialty of yours in particular, which is windows, and what you do in thinking about old windows versus new windows.
Yeah, so we're in year 30 right now. We've got a millwork business as well as a home building business. We build kind of big houses for wealthy clients, so we're very thankful for that. We've been doing it a while now. About 5 years ago on these projects that we'd worked on originally, the windows started rotting out. So we started looking at our commercial business, which was restoring windows like this. This is a courthouse in Texas, 1920s. You have problems on these windows, whether it's the paint color, whether it's the wood quality or whatever else, they begin to, deteriorate. And we're having to try to, come up with solutions for fixing these windows. These windows look terrible, but when we dug into them, it was all old growth redwood. The wood was perfect. I mean, it was literally, we took the paint off and you could see the profiles, you could see everything still there. And so my argument is that, it isn't always just to throw them out. And it also isn't I can save so much money on my energy bills. I think the lesson for this group here, and you guys have much cooler weather than we do, colder, is that we have a window replacement isn't always the best thing. 50% of window replacements right now are going back into window replacements. And so they're not necessarily replacing historic windows. Where you have an Indian Village and a historic designation that requires you to keep these historic windows, what do you do? And I think, these slides that I'm going to show, kind of point to the problem and point to kind of some of the issues. One is if you consider the energy use, and if you guys are required to put blower doors on your houses.
Let's switch to not the windows, but the install. And here's where I get to get nerdy for a minute. The topic today was new construction and what we do on remodels that we might learn from new construction. And Brent and I are pretty similar in that we do new homes and we do remodels. And so I'm always looking at how could I do remodels better? And Shane's world that you live in is the kind of commercial world. And there's a lot of interesting practices and tools that I've kind of grabbed from the commercial world. And this is one of them. A couple years ago, I drove by this house. It was a house with zip system sheathing, and it's a little hard to tell from this zoomed away photo, but it had recessed windows. You familiar with that look? It's like, hey, we're trying to make the window look like it's recessed back in the opening. And the builder had done a terrible job of it, and I've got a full video on it. But the point is, using traditional methods in recessed windows is very difficult. And this is when I kind of first found out about fluid applied flashings. So the first thing we did was we're trying to figure out what's the type of construction that we're dealing with, because that is a big deal. On Shane's projects, if you've got full masonry exteriors on the building, if one of his windows that he installs leaks, number one, will anyone ever know? Maybe not. Number two, will anything get harmed? Probably not. I mean, if there's cinder block underneath that window, or not cinder block, you've got that speed block, I guess they call it, and real plaster, there's a lot of, pardon my super nerdiness, but there's a lot of hygric buffer capacity, which is a super fancy way to say there's a lot of ability to soak up water and not have a problem. New construction, wood framing with, OSB sheathing, doesn't take much water for there to be rot and problems in those houses. So when you look at a remodel and you look at the windows, there's not a lot you can tell about how the house is built when you look at this close up. All you know is we got a brick facade, it's probably wood framing, and these are not Brent Hall's cool windows. These are single pane, aluminum, crappy 70s windows in Texas, which pretty much every 70s built Texas house unfortunately used, minus maybe 3 in the state in the whole decade of the 70s. I do a lot of social media, as nerdy as that sounds. But you, Shane, I would consider you the classic contractor who's really almost 100% referral based, and frankly is very under the radar. Do you remember us talking about this yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, it's impressive. And I think that if I was a young remodeler just starting out, I'd look at a Matt and might have some Insta envy, right? And so,
Right.
he's got, there's a lot of things I'm saying there. And, but having this, oh my gosh, well, that's what I've got to do to be, successful. And what was impressive about going around with you is it's very clear that you have built a reputation on quality and performance and, taking care of a customer. And that's number one. If you can do that, he didn't even have an Instagram handle until yesterday.